If you are not a fan of Marvel comic books, then you might have been wondering what on earth Hawkeye was doing with a sword during the first Endgame trailer. No, it's probably not that he misplaced his bow and arrow. There's actually a comic book precedent for his appearance that many fans have been eagerly awaiting. We'll introduce you to the character named Ronin and explain what could have convinced Clint Barton it was time to rebrand. Let's start out by answering a question that you're probably asking yourself right now, which is, who the heck is Ronin? If you stick to the movies, that's a fair question, since Ronin hasn't yet made an appearance in the MCU, but in the comic books, there have been many heroes who have gone by the name of Ronin over the years. These include Maya Lopez, Eric Brooks, Alexei Shostakov, and of course, our very own Clint Barton. Now let's talk about how Clint ended up ditching the name Hawkeye in favor of Ronin, since it may contain some clues for what's going on right now in the MCU. Everyone knows that Wanda Maximoff has her own set of emotional challenges to deal with, and these, coupled with her incredible powers, can often cause trouble. At one point in the comics, her powers drive her insane, and she brings a Kree warship down over New York City. In the ensuing battle, Hawkeye ends up being blown to bits in an attempt to save his teammates, but don't pile the hate on Scarlet Witch just yet, because even though Clint's dead, he gets better with her help. All it takes is a little bit of moving reality around to set things right, and all of a sudden, Clint's back with no memory of what happened, but when he does remember, he's not too tickled about it and pays Scarlet Witch back by shooting her with an arrow. Yeah, as you've probably guessed, messing with Scarlet Witch is generally a bad idea, even if she kind of deserved it. Clint ends up being wiped from existence, and understandably, everyone thinks he's gone for good, and that's a fair assumption, but it turns out to be a bunch of baloney because Hawkeye gets resurrected. He hangs out with Doctor Strange and then ends up hooking up with Scarlet Witch, who at this point has no memory of her past. You gotta love those awkward comic book romances. Anyway, he finds out that while he was away, Kate Bishop has been going by the name Hawkeye, and he's surprisingly cool with it. Echo, the original Ronin, gives Clint permission to use her secret identity, and all is well with the world. Well, sort of. Those are the facts about what happened to Clint and how he ended up as Ronin, but it's hard to describe his mental state throughout this whole thing. We've seen Clint be a generally affable guy, but his days as Ronin were marked by a much darker and grittier version of the character than we're used to seeing in the MCU. If Clint has made the transition from Hawkeye to Ronin, we're guessing it's not because anything good has happened to him, and we're not just talking about the finger snap of doom, which was almost inconceivably catastrophic. It was so bad, even Captain America looks like he's in therapy because of it, based on the Super Bowl Endgame trailer. It's been made clear that the MCU version of Clint is a family man. I mean, listen, this guy gave up being a superhero in order to spend more time with them. Of course, the second things got interesting, he was quick to pick up his bow and arrow and get back to business, but come on, who doesn't want to be a superhero? Hi, childhood dream, right here. During Captain America Civil War, Hawkeye's back in action before promptly being taken out of action and placed under house arrest. Womp womp. Hey, listen, nobody said being a superhero is easy, just that it's cool. As we all know, the Sokovia Accords means it's a bad time to be a superhero, and even after his first slap on the wrist, we doubt Clint was eager to get back out there. In fact, many fans believe this was why Clint was conspicuously absent from Avengers Infinity War. Maybe he decided to stay home with his family instead of risking getting in trouble, but does that really sound like Clint? Or really anyone with any common sense? Thanos isn't just some random evildoer trying to rob a bank or even level a city. He was trying to destroy half of all life in the universe, so we can't exactly picture Clint simply deciding not to suit up because he doesn't want to get in trouble, either with the government or with his wife. Would he really have let his anger at Tony Stark or the possible legal or family consequences stop him from suiting up to save the world? We just don't think so. And we think there's more to him becoming Ronin than just dealing with what comes after the decimation. Remember where Clint was when we saw him in the trailer for Avengers Endgame? He looked to be in Japan, standing over the bodies of slain members of the Yakuza. If everything was going great in Clint's life prior to the decimation, how did he end up in Japan, taking down members of an organized crime syndicate? Even if his entire family was lost in the decimation, it would seem like a very strange and unexpected time to cross the world and restart being a costume crime fighter, let alone with a different identity. During the second Endgame trailer, we saw Captain America seemingly taking part in a support group for those who lost loved ones in the decimation. He's not in disguise, and his very handsome and recognizable face is on full display. Like Clint, Steve Rogers was also considered a criminal following the events of Civil War. We know he went undercover for a while, but in the aftermath of Infinity War, it seems like the time for that has passed. If the decimation caused Steve Rogers to show his face to the world once more, why did it cause Clint to hide it more than ever? The simple answer is that it wouldn't. Whatever happened to Clint could have happened before the snap. This could also explain why we didn't see anyone communicating with Clint in any capacity during Infinity War. Perhaps they simply couldn't find him because he had already become Ronin. One of the many awesome things about the MCU is that we get to see how something that occurs in one movie has a ripple effect through the whole timeline. The Battle of New York was an epic moment during the Avengers, but in Spider-Man Homecoming, we saw Adrian Toomes struggling to take care of the aftermath. If it wasn't for Thanos giving the Tesseract to Loki, maybe he would have never become the Vulture. Since the Battle of New York, there's been no shortage of crime and scary situations occurring here on Earth. Heck, the Sokovia Accords, which were the main focus of Civil War, happened because civilians lost their lives during a battle involving superheroes. This is just our way of saying Clint could have lost his beloved family in a number of terrible ways even before the decimation happened. In the comics, he becomes Ronin following the events of Civil War, which seems to coincide nicely with this timeline. That being said, we doubt his transformation has anything to do with Scarlet Witch, otherwise this would have probably been mentioned, and if you remember, Scarlet Witch was one of the unlucky people who perished at the end of Infinity War. If you thought Clint's absence during Infinity War was going to be glossed over, yeah, think again. Patience is a virtue, according to Joe Russo when asked about Hawkeye not appearing in the movie. He assured fans he hasn't forgotten about Clint Barton and that his story is no less important than that of any other member of the Avengers. Russo stated, "We cooked up a story for him that is a little bit of a long play, not a short play." It seems like whatever Clint was doing during Infinity War was indeed significant and will play into his actions following the decimation. Co-writer Stephen McFeely confirmed some characters who weren't as prominent during the previous film will get their time to shine during Endgame. Although there are a ton of characters involved here, the expansive nature of the MCU means that there's time for everyone to shine, and this includes Clint. Even Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige admits to being a huge Hawkeye fan, making us think there's a lot more in store for his character. Feige has confirmed as much and adds that he believes Hawkeye's just as awesome as any other Marvel character. Although he knows some people joke about Hawkeye being the weakest Avenger, he can't help but notice that the second he doesn't show up, everyone wants to know where he is. It's possible Clint lost his family, took on the darker and grittier Ronin persona in order to work more covertly and started fighting crime again. This certainly seems like a reasonable explanation, and there aren't many things more dangerous than someone with nothing to lose. Thor even points this out during Infinity War when he's working on creating Stormbreaker. If this is true, it could present a potential difficulty during Endgame. We've seen what happens when people let their emotions control them and then don't stick to the plan. Star-Lord completely blew it by lashing out at Thanos. And if Thor had just aimed for the head, things would have ended very differently. Ronin is more than simply a different look for Clint. It symbolizes that he's going through a very dark and challenging time in his life. But let's not forget that we now have things like time travel and multiple timelines in the MCU. Yeah, you can thank Doctor Strange for making things more complicated there. Some people think Hawkeye is a useless superhero, and on the surface, we can see why. After all, he's a human dude who doesn't even have a super suit. And when you stack him up against someone like Thor, well, it's not all that impressive, but it's been demonstrated over and over again that Hawkeye's a skilled tactician and is able to read and interpret scenarios much better than his peers. Also, because he's an average-looking human, it's easy for him to go undercover and help out in some of the many situations which require subtlety. Thor may be good at fighting, but discreet isn't really in his vocabulary. So when it comes time to potentially travel through time in order to gather Infinity Stones and take down Thanos, there's no doubt Clint would be extremely useful. We could imagine someone like Natasha going to great lengths in order to help him out. What if the Ronin we saw in the first trailer isn't the one we're used to seeing in the MCU? Is it possible the Clint we know perished in the decimation like so many others, causing Natasha to visit another timeline in order to recruit him? He could be from one of the many other timelines where Thanos triumphs. And if he's Ronin, that means he likely has no ties left with his current timeline. Why not hop over to another where it seems as though there might be at least a slim chance of defeating the Mad Titan, right? Different universes and timelines timelines are commonly used in the comic books, but we're just starting to see them utilized in the MCU. This could really help take the concepts to the next level by bringing Clint from another universe over to the MCU timeline. Now, let's talk about the Endgame trailer which premiered during the Super Bowl. Although it was short and we only saw Clint for a moment, it looked as though he had on his trademark bow and arrow instead of a sword. Could this be another example of time being played with? That red glow on his face looks awfully familiar. It looks almost like the reddish glow of the Reality Stone, and takes us back to when Jane Foster came upon it during Thor: The Dark World. Is it possible Clint was Ronin while he was going rogue as a superhero, but becomes Hawkeye when his friends need him again? A popular Endgame theory is that our heroes will end up going back in time in order to claim the Infinity Stones from various places in the timeline. If Clint's on board with the plan, it's possible Hope has broken through his Ronin persona, and now Hawkeye is going to help out his friends. Of course, it's a bit hard to deduce from this extremely short snippet, but it could mean something truly significant. We've been excited about the prospect of seeing Ronin show up in the MCU, but could it be possible that we see Clint as both Ronin and Hawkeye? When you consider that Endgame likely involves no small amount of time travel, it suddenly doesn't quite sound so crazy. Taking on the mantle of Hawkeye again could symbolize that he is wholly committed to the Avengers and fighting back against the Mad Titan. We know the Russo brothers want us to have patience, but we can't help thinking about what comes next for our heroes as we head into the Endgame. Hawkeye or Ronin? Who do you want to see make an appearance during Avengers Endgame? Do you think it's possible that we could be seeing both of them at some point? Let us know what you think in the comments section below, and don't forget, subscribe to CBR for more MCU content. Thanks for watching.